Hey YouTube, it's Brett, and I'm going to bring you guys the next archetype series. Our new favorite deck that we've been doing really well with is called Nekroz, which I'm sure you've all heard of. It's been the most dominant deck for a couple formats now, and although it didn't win Nats, it had a huge presence at Nats and has had a huge presence at pretty much every single tournament since its release, getting usually, if not at least half of the spots in the top whatever tops really. So crazy powerful deck and very popular. And it's kind of cool that it's actually one of the most skillful decks that's ever been actually released for Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion. My definition of skill is the amount of different plays you can make, because the amount of plays you can make as you increase, the amount of bad plays you make increases, and the amount of good plays you can make increases. And being able to decipher between a good play and a bad play, and being able to quickly on the spot think of what the optimal play is when you have so many options is really hard to do. So Nekroz is one of those decks that really actually makes you think super hard the entire day. You can't, I mean, it's definitely not something where you can just pick it up and just instantly know what to do. You need to definitely get comfortable with the deck first. There's obvious plays, but then the subtle plays are what separate good Nekroz players from great Nekroz players, and separate them also from really bad ones. So we're going to start this off like we will any archetype series by just introducing all the archetype cards. So that's what we'll do in this video, and then we'll start getting more and more in depth. So I'm going to start with, there are 4 main deck ritual monsters, Nekroz monsters that aren't rituals. Most of them are rituals. You should know that also. But these are the 4 non-ritual monsters, and most of them are pretty important. So this is Shurit, Strategist of the Nekroz. He is definitely one of the most powerful cards in the deck. It is currently limited to 1 for a very good reason. It can be used as a tribute for any ritual of a Nekroz monster, and it can only do so if it's exactly 1 Nekroz ritual monster you're going to summon. He counts as the whole tribute no matter what level they are, even though he is level 3. He can be. Furthermore, he also, when tributed, can add a warrior type Nekroz ritual monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use this effect of Shurit, Strategist of the Nekroz, once per turn. So he can be used as a tribute multiple times, but you can only search once. Also note, he can be banished from the graveyard I'll talk about that later, but he'll still count as the full tribute if he's banished from the graveyard. Next up is the level 4 Great Sorcerer of the Nekroz. Something I'm going to mention right now, every single Nekroz card except for Dance Princess has exactly 2 effects. So it's probably good to get straight which monsters have which effects, because they all synergize very importantly based on these effects, and there's super long pathways, essentially is what the deck follows, and it's all based on the synergy between their 2 effects. Great Sorcerer of the Nekroz, however, is unique with Exa in that each of their effects, any other Nekroz card besides these 2 can use both of its effects in a turn. These 2 are limited to once per turn. They can only use 1 of their 2 effects, and these are the only 2 Nekroz monsters where that is a thing. So his first effect is if he is tributed, you can add 1 Nekroz spellcaster monster from your deck to your hand. If this card is banished, you can add 1. You can send 1 Nekroz monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Great Sorcerer. You can only use 1 Great Sorcerer effect per turn and only once per turn. Then we have Dance Princess, which is unique in the fact that it has 3 effects. So while it's on the field, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of a Nekroz ritual spell, nor can they target Nekroz ritual monsters with card effects. If this card is tributed by a card effect, you can target 1 of your banished Nekroz monsters except Dance Princess, add it to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Also level 4. Then we have the level 5 Exa, Enforcer of the Nekroz, Dragon, 2000 attack. So when he's tributed, you can add 1 Dragon. So between these 3, you can add Warrior, Spellcaster, and Dragon, which are the 3 kinds of ritual monsters. Also note he is a warrior, so he's a rota target. These guys aren't as searchable. So he adds dragons, and when he is banished, you can special summon one of your banished Nekroz monsters. But also note that these are the only Nekroz monsters that are actually able to be special summoned without a ritual spell. So these are his only targets for that effect. But that is not bad by any means because they're all very powerful targets. And so that is the effect monsters. And now we're going to get into what the deck's really about is the ritual monsters. So Nekroz ritual monsters consist of levels 1 through 10, and 3 through 10, and there's 1 at each level. And most of them are very important to the deck, and they're all very good in different numbers and have different very important effects. So each of them, again, has 2. There's one distinguishing thing that I'd like to point out right now, though. So there are 2 tiers of Nekroz monsters. There are, I call babies and bosses, although they're all very good. The reason I call that is their summoning conditions are slightly different. So the level 3, 4, and 5 Nekroz of Colossus, Yugioh, and Catastor can be summoned by attributing a monster whose level is equal to their level. Whereas this card it cannot be special summoned by other ways. Without using Nekroz. Oh yeah, so he can't tribute himself. You can't tribute. Same with Brionic. Oh, wait. So this can. Oh yeah, Brionic's in these too. I always forget that. So what makes these ones special is that they can tribute a level 4, any level 4, and it'll be able to summon him. But for instance, with this card, you cannot tribute a level 10 to summon him. You have to tribute monsters whose level does not equal 10. So you're going to have to tribute some combination to equal 10 or tribute Shuret. Alright, so that's the distinguishing factor between the baby 4 and the big 4. And the big 4 obviously then are slightly more powerful effects in some ways to make up for that. So I'm going to go in order by level though of their effects now. So Colossus, each Nekroz monster has an effect that can be used by discarding them at certain times, and then a different one when they're on the field. So Nekroz of Colossus discard effect is that you can discard him to add 1 Nekroz ritual spell from your deck to your hand. Also note that all their effects are once per turn, and it's a hard once per turn, so you can only use the effect of Nekroz of Colossus once per turn. So you can discard him once, and you can use his on-field effect once per turn, but only once per turn. His on-field effect is that you can target 1 monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck. Its attack becomes 0, and its effects are negated. That can be used in the damage tip, and it's a quick effect, so usable on your opponent's turn. No, it's until the end of the turn, Bradley. Next up is Nekroz of Yugioh. His discard effect is that you can discard him to target 1 Nekroz card in your graveyard, and this can be spell or monster, except for Yugioh. Add that to your hand. His on-field effect, which is one of the more devastating ones, is that monsters special summoned from the extra deck have their effects negated on the field. So he is he's a skill drain for the extra deck. And he's 2300 beat stick at level 4, which is very, very powerful. Next up is Nekroz of Catastor. His discard effect is that you can discard him to target 1 Nekroz card in your graveyard, with the babies being the only valid targets. Again, these ones, because the Nekroz monsters are unable to be special summoned except by ritual spells. So these are the only targets. And special summon 1 of these from your graveyard. So he's a reborn for 1 of these. His on-field effect is that he turns all Nekroz monsters you control into a Catastor. So if they attack a extra deck monster, it's destroyed immediately at the start of the damage step. Last up is one of the most powerful ones in the deck, Brionic, level 6. And you can discard him to add 1 Nekroz monster from your deck to your hand, any of them, ritual monsters or these monsters. So Searcher of the deck, he is semi-limited because he's so powerful. And his on-field effect, which is also amazingly powerful, is that you can target up to 2 monsters special summoned from the extra deck and return them there once per turn. That's a spell speed 1 effect, but return them to the deck. So it'll also return pendulum monsters that were like special summoned from the extra deck to the main deck too. Very powerful card. Next up is Nekroz of Gungnir, who can be discarded to target 1 Nekroz monster you control. It cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects for the entire turn. So really crazy good for keeping something you need to keep alive, because it literally keeps them most forms of protection except just getting bounced or banished. He'll work. His on-field effect, also good, is you can discard one Nekroz card for cost to target one card on the field, destroy it. That's spell speed 2. And very powerful. So this is the first Nekroz monster that can't use... So you can't tribute a level 7. You'd have to tribute some combination to equal 7 or tribute Shurit. Next up is one of the big boss monsters of the deck, Nekroz of Valkyrius, level 8. 2900 attack. You can discard him when your opponent declares an attack, negate the attack, and if you do, in the battle phase. And when you discard him, you do have to banish one Nekroz monster or card from your graveyard. So it could also be a spell. And then discard him, and then it'll, as long as the attack is negated, the battle phase will instantly end. So he's like a Swiss Scarecrow, kind of. Very, very powerful. His on-field effect is that you can activate it, and then at resolution tribute up to 2 monsters, and draw that many cards. And this is extremely powerful in a deck where some of your monsters get effects, additional effects when tributed. So you can end up drawing cards and then searching out some more. So perhaps if you got lucky and tributed both of these, for instance, you'd draw 2 cards, and then you'd also search a dragon and a warrior Nekroz. So very, very powerful card. Along with a 2900 beater, very hard to get over. Scariest card of the deck, which I'm sure most of you know about in Fear. Nekroz of Trishula it's Trishula. There's one distinguishing thing, though, is that, so when he is ritual summoned, you can activate his effect, and there has to be a monster, or there has to be a card in your opponent's graveyard, field, and hand, and if at resolution there still is, you can banish one from each, non-targeting. So it's Trishula, but they need to have at least one valid target in each at resolution for him to use the effect. So still very, very powerful. Crazy powerful, and this is a definite game winner, and it's a format definer, because you literally have to make your plays being afraid of Trishula, and sometimes you can't make good first turn plays if it sets you up to get trished, because the deck is very good at summoning its ritual monsters. Crazy consistent, and this thing can just wreck a lot of decks that perhaps need their graveyard monsters or can't deal with losing 2 or 3 cards in a turn. His discard effect, also very good, is when a Nekroz monster is targeted for a card effect, you can discard him to negate the card effect. This can happen in damage step. It does not destroy, however, it just negates the effect, but that is still usually very good. Last, but certainly not least, is Nekroz of Decisive Armor, the 3300 monstrosity. This card is able to, once per turn on the field, target one face-down card your opponent controls, banish it. Crazy powerful. 3300 attack. Also, it can be discarded at any point during the turn, including the damage step, to increase a Nekroz monster's attack on the field by 1000 until the end of the turn. Oh, so yeah, something to note is it destroys the set card and then banishes it. So yeah, like Bottomless Trap Hole, it's exactly like that. Still, crazy good card, usually ran at 1. Last up, the last 3 cards are also very important to the deck, are the deck's 3 ritual spells. Like all the Nekroz monsters, they each have 2 effects. One is shared among them, and each of them also has a unique one. So all of them can only be used once per turn, and used in Yu-Gi-Oh! Means that if it's activated and then negated, you can still not use it for the rest of the turn. So that's very important. So Nekroz Mirror says you can tribute monsters whose level equals a Nekroz monster in your hand. Equals exactly a Nekroz monster in your hand, and you can either tribute them from your hand, field, or banish Nekroz monsters from your graveyard to equal that exact card in your hand. So, for instance, if you had... And it can do any combination. So if you have a level 4 in your graveyard and a level 4 on the field, you need to summon a level 8 from your hand, you can tribute this and banish this from your graveyard to summon it. And then when it's in the graveyard, you can banish this card and any Nekroz monster as long as you have no monsters on the field. And you can search any Nekroz spell itself, Nekroz Kaleidoscope, or Nekroz Cycle from your deck. So this is where the Nekroz maintain their crazy grind game, is by the spells being able to search more spells. So they really out-resource you a lot, and then with their crazy powerful boss monsters just kill you in a couple turns if you don't have the answers. That second effect is where a lot of the power of the deck comes from, is just getting those free pluses. Nekroz Cycle says you contribute cards from your hand or field, and then special summon a Nekroz monster from either your hand or your graveyard, so it can be like a reborn for your rituals. Really cool card, and then also can be banished from your graveyard if you control no monsters to add, along with a monster, to add any of the spells again. Finally is Nekroz of Kaleidoscope, and this card, I'm just going to show this right now. So this one, you contribute exactly one monster. So this is different from the others, which contribute a combination to special summon up to multiple ritual monsters from your hand, whose total level equal the level of the attributed monster. Might as well actually show a couple things. And then, in addition to tributing monsters from your hand or field, you can also send a monster from your extra deck instead. Crazy powerful effect. I can send this card, which is Herald of Arclight, to summon a Unicorn from your hand, and when Herald is sent to the graveyard, can't miss timing, you can add one ritual spell or ritual monster from your deck to your hand. So if a very common play is just activate this, summon this, send this, and you can search pretty much any card in your deck instantly. Crazy good. Furthermore, you can send things like a level 11 to summon a level 4 plus level 7 from your hand, so this can drop huge amounts of damage in one move. So 8 and 3, 4 and 7 are both options. Or you can send a level 12 monster. I know this doesn't have stars, but it's level 12. To summon a 4 and an 8. Or another really cool combination is 3 and 12, and then that'll 3 and 9, sorry, which makes 12. And then you can trish them out of nowhere when they aren't expecting it. So next up is going to be the non-archetype support, which there is literally hundreds of great cards that synergize with this deck. This deck thrives on its ability to synergize with other cards. So hope you guys enjoyed, and we will keep on going.